Happiness is not about avoiding problems or challenges. They're all going to come. No matter what you do, they'll come marching into your life. And happiness is really about knowing how to approach them and being intentional about your whole life and what it has to offer.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to this wonderful show called the My Future Business Show. I'm on the line with Vindy Teja. How are you, Vindy?
I'm great, Rick. Thank you.
Yes, we've been talking about your journey leading up to this point, and we're obviously going to be jumping into your book authorship along with a whole host of other things about life hacks and how to live a better life. Now, for everybody's on the call today, Vindy is a certified divorce coach. She's a life coach and obviously an author and also a TEDx speaker. And I think that's probably a really good spot to take the call, Vindy. Could we talk a little bit about your TEDx experience?
Oh, absolutely. I was called the accidental speaker. I went to the information session with a friend who was convinced that I would be interested, and I went and I was just bedazzled, and I got working on my idea, which I had, but I worked really hard on it, and then I auditioned, I got selected, and it was quite a rigorous process, but
Yes.
incredibly rewarding, and it was great to have that platform.
So where was that?
So it would be here in British Columbia. So
Hmm.
I'm based in Vancouver, and it was called TEDx Bear Creek Park. So that's a city. Well, the city is called Surrey, but the neighborhood is called Bear Creek Park. So that's why it was named
Yes.
uh, Bear Creek Park.
We've had a lot of TEDx speakers on the show, and I understand that, like you say, is very stringent and quite short for the amount of content you'd have to share. How long did you get on stage?
They encouraged us to have our talk be about 10 to 12 minutes. Technically, we had 18 minutes, but in terms of what the optimum audience attention span is, it's
Hmm.
usually about 10 to 12 minutes. So we really worked hard on getting our talks. And it's hard because you want to share a lot of information. So you have to be, you have to keep shaving and shaving and whittling it down to the essential points, but still make it entertaining. And, you want it to have some depth. So you
Yes.
don't just want it to be cliche. So it was quite a good learning process for me.
Yeah, I watched it and I really enjoyed it. It was a wonderful experience. Now, how did you feel the moment that you walked off the stage?
Relieved. you know, you always worry you're going to get that deer in the headlights feeling,
Yes.
and you can prepare all you want, and sometimes that just happens. And so when I came off, I thought, oh, I think I only, forgot to say about 2 words that I meant to say, and I was pretty incredulous, but relieved.
Yeah, well, look, I'm always very impressed with those who have the ability to face the public's well-known fear of public speaking. So, congratulations on that. It was wonderful. Now, I know that you live in Vancouver. Do you travel around for work still? Are you based there full time now?
I'm based in Vancouver full time.
Hmm.
The beauty of coaching is that a lot of it these days is done by phone and video chatting. So you can have clients all over the place, but they're very accessible.
Yes, fantastic. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at your wonderful book. It's very, very colourful. I love it. It pops off the screen, and we'll be making the links to that. It's called YOLO Essential Life Hacks for Happiness. Now, before we jump into the core of the call and go through some of these wonderful life hacks, I'd love to learn a little bit about what you do outside of your commitments. What do you are you a sporty type? What do you do?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes. So I grew up playing a lot of sports, and my dad was a sportsman, my brothers were athletes, and so I fell into that. So that comes naturally to me.
Hmm.
So hiking, tennis, I used to be an avid rollerblader, and then I started thinking about the safety of my limbs and how
Broken
fast I
legs.
was going. You get more conservative as you get older. You drive
Yes,
more
yes.
sensibly. So I do less rollerblading, but I stick to hiking, walking, and going to the gym. And the skipping rope is one of my favorite friends.
Yes, fantastic. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, as a proud parent, as I am too, I often find that there's so much we can learn from our children and their way of thinking about the world. In terms of the work you do, what could you say that you've learnt from your own children?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, I think when I think about my coaching,
Hmm.
I think one of the things that you learn from parenting is you're you're in the you feel like you're in the teaching position, but often you're in the learning position. They're teaching
Yes,
you. They're
yes.
teaching you how to guide them and vice versa. So that's sort of the same process I use with clients. Like, you can make suggestions, but you ask permission and you see how the conversation flows, and they suggest a lot to you. So I think that's a skill I've picked up from parenting for
Yes,
sure.
thank you very much. Now, I think your life's journey is an important thing that we need to cover to give some context to today's call, Vindy. I'd love if you could, please, if you could talk a little bit about your business, your coaching business directly, your book authorship, but leading up to that, what was your life's experience that brought you to this point?
It's a long, convoluted, and somewhat interesting story. But I'll give you the Coles Notes version. When I started out, I didn't think about coaching or divorce coaching for sure. That wasn't on my university radar at all. I'm the youngest child of immigrants from India who came to Canada in the 1960s. And so, my dad gave me three options. Well, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, or you can be an engineer. And so, a lot of my peers had the same experience. And then he's
Yes,
like, well, I'll give you a few more options. You could be a nurse, you could be a teacher or an accountant. So, he was a little bit more flexible than some of
flexible.
the other
Expand your horizons.
I know, exactly. So I chose law, and I actually really loved debating and ideas in high school. So I did have an aptitude and a real interest in it. But I fell into coaching before I think it was even called that. After I was called to the bar here in British Columbia, I moved to Ontario for my then husband's career training.
Hmm.
And after a long and frustrating job search in a much smaller town, I landed a position as director of career development at my alma mater, Western Law School.
Hmm.
And so I coached 450 law students. So they
Wow.
were my clients. And that's where I cut my teeth coaching. And then eventually I moved back and started a family. And then um, the divorce from hell took place.
Uh,
That's what I call it.
Nice way to
Uh,
wrap it up. Yep.
yeah, and so that was a major setback. And I had been through serious challenges before, but this one was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back.
Hmm.
And there was no quick fix. I had to feel it, I had to deal with it, I had to heal from it, and it was quite a process and a lot of time and energy and money. And I got thinking, I know I'm not the only one who's, gone through this and has come out the other side. And I found myself helping a lot of people, and I did a lot of pro bono work. And then I decided I need to go pro
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people who need this kind of service. They, don't want to just spend all their money on lawyers, and they need sort of a thinking partner and a sounding board. And so then I decided to integrate my legal training, my past coaching experience, as well as all the healing and learning I had done that I had from, divorce and the parenting process.
Hmm.
And my hope was that I could help people manage their divorce stress and help them create happy and healthy lives for themselves and their children.
Yeah, it certainly is an interesting title, a certified divorce coach. It's not one that I've actually heard about before, at least at this stage.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I get
uh,
that a lot. People are like, "Oh, so do you encourage people to divorce?" I
uh,
go, "Oh." I go, "Does the doctor encourage you to get an illness?"
no, no.
But, at least when you're going through something like that, you want to have like professionals who can help you and guide you through the process so that, you don't make the biggest mistakes and that, you can look at yourself in the mirror after the whole process.
Well, there's obviously some benefits here. Do you obviously you'd become a somewhat of an accountability partner or a bit of a counselor almost, would you?
hmm Well, I'm not a clinical counselor, but divorce is an emotional process. So the
Yes.
emotions do certainly come into it, and it's helping the clients, move through that and then focus on sort of next steps and help them build their capacity. So I would say emotions are definitely part of the process. And often clients do get some counseling as well, but not all of them do. A lot of them are, move very quickly into the coaching process, and I help them through the business of divorce, like getting organized, being good clients, making, sound decisions for themselves. So it can go all different ways depending on where they are in the process.
Yes, thank you for sharing. I often think about the linkages of one's experience as a coach, from client to client, and how one person's experience can be used to benefit another. Do you ever find yourself offering similar ideas and advice and guidance from one client to another, or is it unique every single time?
That's a great question. And I think you hit on something, the difference between counseling and coaching, because counseling, you don't use sort of personal examples and other things through the counseling process. But in coaching, you often use that. And clients are usually coming to you because of that reason as well, because, you have a certain background, like you've been through a divorce or you have the legal background. And so I find that yes, there's as many different types of divorces as there are probably ice cream flavors. There's, everybody's situation is unique,
Yes.
and the different circumstances, but there are a lot of common issues that people grapple with. It's almost like, if you look at a relationship breakup and you look at somebody losing a loved one who passes away, that's a transition, and there's stages to that transition that are in common between both of those people. And so you can predict some of those, and you can help them move through those, and so then you are able to use experiences from previous clients, to help your current client.
Yes, this would be a somewhat of a like a networked experience, I suspect. Do you have alliances and relationships with actual counsellors that you refer people to? How does that side of it work? Can you help people with those parts of it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it, I think that like one of my experiences through the divorce process is that I realized I had a really good support network, people from different educational and professional backgrounds.
Hmm.
And I called them my board of directors. They were the people that I would go to for, when I was making an important decision. And a lot of people don't have that. And I realized that when I started coaching people. So that is one of the services I provide. So if they're looking for lawyers, if they're looking for financial advisors, counselors, there's so many different things that go on in a divorce. So they might need different services. So I have built relationships with different people, and sometimes, a mediator might be a better idea than,
Hmm.
you know, uh, a particular lawyer. So definitely, that's part of what I do.
Now, Vindy, I'm looking through your bio here, which is very comprehensive, and some of the things that jump out off the page for me is self-doubt. The question leads me to think, well, with regard to your self-doubts, was this the formative stage for you to create this book, or was this just your personal journey trying to process what you had experienced?
Oh, that's a really fascinating question. You know, what I would say is that I think when you go through something, it's in your head, it's in your heart, and you're working through everything. And I feel that this book was uh, something that I could do with all of that and make it more productive, so it
Hmm.
could come out in the book and somehow even integrate and all of my learning and be able to share it with more people than just say my friends or my one-on-one clients. So, that was definitely one of the reasons. And another reason is I I find that we tend to write what we want to learn about more, like
Yes.
what you want to,
Yep.
and that's what I found in the writing process. I had a lot of these ideas circling in my head, and I was using them in my coaching practice and in my parenting, but I'd never really sat down and formulated them and wrote about them. So I found myself really delving into this process and wanting to figure things out. So it was such a journey, and also I intended it to be originally a legacy book for my daughter, because I had had a health scare after the separation and divorce, and I thought, gosh, I don't want my kid consulting a Ouija board if she wants to get
Hey,
advice
Mum,
from
are
me.
you there?
Yeah, exactly. Or, or going to Google all the time. So I thought, this would be good for her to, have as a reference guide. So that was part of where the inspiration came, or at least it led me to continue, through the writing process and stick it out all the way to the end.
It reinforces what you've just mentioned, that we write about what we want, doesn't it? You've obviously had your daughter in mind when you were, in part at least, when you were writing this book, to be somewhat of a guide. So that's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. You also talk about deconstructing happiness. It's not a term I've heard before. Could you explain what that meant to you?
Yeah, so I use the analogy of hacks in
Hmm.
in the book. So happiness hacks, and when we think of a hack, we think of a shortcut, or a skill, or a clever method that increases productivity or efficiency. And so that was my goal with the book, to simplify happiness without being simplistic. And, I don't propose a happiness hack. Like, I'm not, going to go all Eckhart Tolle in the book and say, the power of now, that,
Now, yes, do the
happiness
now
is
thing.
simple. Yeah, it's in this moment. I mean, that's a whole other Q&A that we could do. But
Yes.
the approach I take is happiness hacks. And so I explain what they are, why they matter, and how to implement them immediately. And and I also work in built in a workbook. And so what I do is I break down the overall puzzle of happiness into smaller, more manageable hacks. Then when they're put together, they form the whole.
Hmm.
And then I share the experience of others as well, who have dealt with their own set of circumstances and challenges. So I liken it to TripAdvisor or Yelp, except for happiness and life.
On balance, we know that we can't always be happy. Would you
Mm.
agree with that statement? And if so, when we are down, what is your hack for bouncing back up?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, Actually, the way I conceive of happiness is, that it's not a magic pill or a place. It's a way of being. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of people, they approach happiness as a state of being, or a status they achieve, or I'll be happy when
Yeah.
I I get that job, or I lose the 10 pounds, or the divorce is settled and the assets are split. And those are situations, and so they depend on a state of being or a status you achieve. And we all know situations change, and they often change for reasons beyond our control. So, for example, I might buy that house, but what if I compare it to my friend's house, which is newer and bigger? Is that going to diminish my happiness? Or if I drop the 10 pounds and fit into the jeans, and, what if I gain it back? Am I going to be unhappy again?
Mm,
So,
mm.
so the way I treat those things are as goals. So, if they're important to me, I'll treat them as goals. I'll make plans and I'll do my best to achieve them. But I'm not going to wait until those things happen in order to be happy. Um, so the way I think of happiness is basically, it comes from genuinely connecting with yourself and others. And this leads to healthier communication and relationships. And, it's Happiness is not about avoiding problems or
Yeah.
challenges, or setbacks, or even those self-doubts that you had mentioned. They're all going to come no matter what you do. They'll come marching into your life. And happiness is really about knowing how to approach them and being intentional about your whole life and what it has to offer. So it's
That
a way of being rather than a state of being.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I had this thought rattling around in my head about external influences on our ability or choice to be happy. What do you say about external sources like marketing and people's opinions, and what would you suggest people do to, I guess, improve how they deal with those situations?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So they have these outside influences that are sort of dictating or suggesting that, oh, well, you'll be happy if you buy this car,
Mm-hmm.
or you have so many followers on Instagram. And, it's easy to fall prey to those things. And I think it almost becomes a way of giving away your happiness to these external things. And so it becomes all the more reason you want to cultivate the internal self and work on kind of, who am I? What are my habits? What are my goals? And, start comparing yourself to who you are as opposed to, who Rick is.
Yeah.
And, because Rick's got a different set of circumstances. He's living in sunny Australia. He's got this, he's got that. He comes from a different cultural background. He might have a different, family upbringing. And so we compare our inside lives to people's, highlight reel,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. And so getting away from that, I present sort of hacks to bring people into focus of like what's going on in their lives and how to focus on those things. And then basically compare themselves to themselves, not others.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your experiences, your life's journey. I think about technology, and I think the moment in time that we were handed that mobile device, or at least the one that we could interact on the screen with, everything changed. You talk about a number of different life hacks, from smartphone hacks and so forth. What do you think is some of the best hacks that you talk about in your book? What are your favorites?
Yeah, I have different favorites depending on the day and which one I happen to need. But I'd say I have a few favorites. The first one I would say deals with mindset, and it's an acronym I use called QTIP, and it stands for Quit Taking It Personally.
Ah,
When people say or do things that, and we can think about this even in relation to parenting, but ourselves as well, when people say or do things that hurt your feelings or interfere with your life somehow, we often assume it's because of something we did or we are. Um, but what if what they say or do is just a reflection of their own reality based on things like their own past experiences and conditioning and values and so forth. And often they may not even be aware that they're doing that. So that's my favorite hack is Q-tip. And
mm-hmm.
my poor daughter has to hear it all the time. She's like, let me guess, Q-tip,
Q-tip.
Q-tip. You're going to need some more material now, Mom. And so, and another favorite I have is it deals with communication and how to exercise the power of words more consciously and responsibly. And it's the acronym THINK. So you challenge yourself before you speak or text or write something to someone, especially if it's reactive or if you're about to give unsolicited advice. You
Yes.
ask yourself the following questions. T, is it true? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspiring? N, is it necessary? And K, is it kind? So that's another one of my favorite hacks. And the last one I would say deals with action and specifically giving back, which I refer to as developing an antenna for assisting. And it's a simple idea that by helping others, we're actually helping ourselves. And, it's like going to the gym. It's like a muscle. The more you flex it, the stronger you become and the more weight you can handle. And eventually you see opportunities for it everywhere, all the time, little and big.
Yeah, I often think about hacks, travel hacks. Do you
Hmm.
explore those sorts of things in your book, or is it more internal, sort of self-driven hacks?
I would say it's the latter. So it's more internal self-driven hacks, but that's where part of the inspiration for the book comes because I see, especially young people, but I think people of all ages do it now, especially given how busy we are, that we are looking for these hacks and shortcuts. And the way that I guess I implement it in my book partly is I do interviews with others, and so they give their um, feedback on the hacks and how they've used them in their lives. So you do get some comparison. So it's not just Vindy spouting off about what she thinks and feels and has experienced. I really wanted to make sure that I brought other voices in, and so I have, you know, different professions and entertainment and sports and business people and doctors and lawyers, and because I wanted it to be more representative.
Yeah, I'm very interested in book authors, the authoring process, but I'm also interested in how they go about content generation and compilation. As a new hack comes to you, what's your process? Do you just jot it down on a piece of paper, or how do you capture it? What do you do with it, and how does it end up in your next book?
Oh, this is a juicy question. um, I have started to write them down, and especially after I came up with the whole hacking analogy, once you're writing about something, you seem to see it everywhere, and you
Yes.
start paying attention to it. It's like, somebody tells you looking for yellow vehicles, and then you see them all over the road. And
Hmm.
so I feel like my attention's been turned that way. And so I've started to write, especially acronyms, because I find, again, even in university, I was an art student. I was in English and sociology, and there was a lot of memorizing and a lot of material that you had to absorb. And so we used acronyms all the time just to remember, how to, formulas and how to answer questions. And I find that that's very useful in everyday life because it's hard to keep track of everything. But if you have a handy little acronym, um, I had just come across another one the other day. I think it was called Savers, and it was something about silence and uh, all these different things that we can do on a daily basis for an hour, like writing and scribing, and it was just such a nice acronym. And I thought, okay, I could do an hour of that a day. And so, so I'm definitely looking for them all the time.
And you talked essentially what you're talking about there is routine. What does your routine look like in the morning? Do you have a standard way of going about your day?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, often we get derailed because we haven't, A, we don't have a routine, and B, we haven't thought about the obstacles that might get in the way and what our solutions for those are. So, you know, the first step is setting up that routine and not fumbling. So then you actually can go back to it, and then it becomes a habit. But then you also think about the obstacles. They might be work, and they might be, time constraints. So what are you going to do in those situations? So, I mean, I use the personal training example of there's this workout that I had found online. It's called the hundreds workout, and it takes a total of about 7 minutes. So if you don't have the 20 minutes, you might have the 7 minutes.
Yeah,
So you could
yeah.
still build in that exercise. But if you haven't thought about it and you're really conditioned, oh, I have to go to the gym, I have to take that 1 hour out, then you might just drop that because, it gets in the way of the other things that you need to accomplish that day.
There's some wonderful content on the call today for everybody who's with us. I'm with Vindy, and we're talking about her work with her book and her certified divorce coaching services. Now, Vindy, what is coming up for you now? Are you currently writing any new books?
I have some ideas. I have about two or three ideas related to sort of the divorce process. I did my TEDx talk on prenuptial agreements. It's called With This Prenup I Thee Wed. And I thought that was kind of catchy. Uh,
Very true.
Yes, yes, exactly. So I've had some interest, like follow-up interest in sort of maybe writing a guide, even hacks,
Hmm.
sort of along the same line. And I'm interested in parts of the divorce process and, you know, getting a little bit more specific. to that topic in my next production.
Yes, fantastic. There is no doubt that there will be another production coming from your stable soon. Now, Vindy, where are people going to find YOLO Essential Life Hacks for Happiness, the book?
They can go to my website, and all the links are there to the different retailers. So they can go to www.vindyteja, that's VINDYTEJA.com. And they can also sign up for my free newsletter there and a freebie download. And the links to my TEDx are there. The links to my Instagram and Facebook are there. And my Instagram handle is VINTEA11. So that's VINTEA 11. And my Facebook page is VINDY TEJA, LLB.
Well, there you go, everybody who's on the call. I will be making available all of the links back to Vindy, back to the book. Vindy, I've had just such a wonderful experience spending some time with you on the My Future Business show today.
Thank you very much, Rick. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk to you, and I love the way that we explored all the different topics.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.